What do you do when every step feels like a setback and the pain in your Achilles just won't go away? Today's guest knows that struggle all too well after battling insertional Achilles tendinopathy and ultimately undergoing surgery. Tina Muir made an inspiring comeback that many runners only dream of. And if you've been sidelined by stubborn heel pain or are facing the tough decision of surgery, this episode is your roadmap to some hope, healing, and running strong again. Welcome to episode 277 on the Healthy Runner podcast, where we help you get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. Today, I have the pleasure of having the incredible Tina Muir back on the show. For those that don't know, Tina's work. She is the founder and president of a nonprofit, Racing for Sustainability, and the founder and CEO of Running for Real, a former elite runner who represented Great Britain and Northern Ireland. She transitioned from competitive athletics to sustainability advocacy after recognizing her sport's environmental impact. Through her award-winning Running for Real podcast, social media, and book, Becoming a Sustainable Runner, Tina inspires runners to connect their passion for the sport with climate action. Racing for Sustainability helps race organizers reduce waste, conserve resources, and foster a culture of environmental responsibility. Tina is doing it all, making an impact, and I got to see some of that impact firsthand participating in my first plogging event that Tina led this past spring during the Boston Run Show. Welcome back on the show, Tina. It's great to see you as always.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. And I have to admit, I kind of got stuck on the word, and that you said, I can't remember how you worded it, but you said something about she has made a comeback. And that's the first time anyone has said that. And my brain got stuck on that. I'll be honest, of like, do you think I have? This is a question to you and to myself.
Yes, absolutely. For the runs that I've seen you posted lately, I would say I know it's not necessarily at the level of running that you were used to, but where you are right now, this is a huge feat. Absolutely.
Yeah.
After this surgery.
Yeah, no,
for sure.
It's an interesting one, a journey back from a surgery, because there's so many wins along the way. And then to that point, where is the line where you say like, okay, I've done with that. Like, where is the line? I don't know. And maybe I've already passed it. Like, because to your point, the training, I've been running 55 miles a week, long runs. That's solid. So that's very interesting. I hadn't actually considered that until you used that word comeback. So I'm sure we're going to like dive into this, the meaning of this, but it was just like, that really caught me off guard of like, oh yeah, I guess I have.
Right. It definitely brings up an interesting topic in terms of like expectations too, right? And the type of expectations that we put on ourselves. And like you said, where do we draw the line, right? Like what is considered success, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
very interesting.
It is. And actually, I've been thinking about this a lot with, I hope by the time this comes out, I've done it, but I have the race I want to do in mind. And I just cannot bring myself to sign up. I have the link. I have it there. I look at it often. I don't know. There's something about it that like feels so, I don't know, like, okay, it's time. Like, I guess the way I've been thinking about it is that's the point where I say, okay, I'm not in rehab anymore. Let's go, And that seems like a big jump to take, even though I have done races, and even though I have plenty of races planned for the rest of the year, that kind of goal race feels very intimidating in a way of I'm trying to just think about what it would be. I've been trying to work out what this is, but I think it's just I can't lean on I'm in rehab anymore. It'd be like, okay, now we're training.
It's like you're fully turning the page into this whole new chapter, right? Like the injury, the surgery is over and done. It's like in your past, and yeah. Okay.
And there's some safety in like being in rehab, right? Because you don't have to put yourself out there. because you're like, well, I'm coming back from this, or well, I'm, still recovering from that. Whereas for me, signing up for 100K and the 100K is in Cape Town, that's a real commitment right there. So you're right, the turning of the page.
Yes. And this is great. But before we actually get into your recovery and everything that you've been through with the Achilles surgery, I have to start with the big shift. After 439 episodes, you recently announced a pause on the Running for Real podcast. As someone who has admired your work and been a longtime listener, I know how much that show has meant to many of us. Can you take us behind that decision and really what led you to this moment? And how are you feeling now that you've officially stepped back from the mic? As you were joking before we started here that you had a little dust on your mic.
I mean, I wasn't joking. There was like a legit layer of dust. You saw that. That was not a sprinkling. That was a serious buildup of dust. But yes, no, we were joking about that, and I wish the listeners could have seen me cleaning that mic off because it was very dusty. Yeah, it's funny because it actually didn't feel like that big of a decision. I think I'd been processing it a lot over the last few years, even as I shifted more into the sustainability work, as I kind of more and more of my work and financial income was coming from working with the running racing industry of sustainability. The focus was less there. I think people could probably tell my passion wasn't there. I mean, I've been podcasting for 10 years. And doing anything for 10 years is a lot. And that's not to say I didn't love the conversations. I loved all of the conversations. I just felt like it was kind of time to take that leap of faith. It was a bit of a leap of faith, right? It's so easy we were talking about comfort zones a minute ago, but it is so easy to stay with what you know. And this did feel in a big way like I was moving away from that, but it also, the moment of deciding to do it felt like maybe that had already been decided 6 months ago or so. And it was just actually saying it out loud to my team that was the hard part. That said, I did feel very emotional the day it came out. I went for a trail run that morning and I did feel emotional thinking about, the amount of things in my life that I've come across or opportunities I've had because of it. There's not much really in my professional life that hasn't come about in some way because of the podcast. Now I know that was the right choice. I feel excited, even like talking to you today, it was kind of exciting to think about coming to talk to you because it wasn't something I haven't done in a month or so. And more as time passes, I think it will be exciting to go on podcast to bring back that, feeling again. But yeah, I guess we'll see how I go as time passes on, if I miss it or if I'm kind of like, that was a great chapter and I'm ready to leave it as it was.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And for my listeners, they're familiar with my story of going from like full-time faculty and teaching in a PT program for like 19 years and stepping into kind of my passion. So I can certainly relate to some of the feelings that you went through. And I know so many people listening can relate to that feeling of like needing to step back, even from something that they love. And speaking of stepping back, you've also had to navigate a really tough, like physical journey with this insertional Achilles tendinopathy and surgery. And how did your injury and the like recovery process influence your perspective on not just on like running, but on identity, rest, and the pressure of like always keep pushing forward, like both like sport and life?
And I want to start by saying this is the first time I have been asked on a podcast since kind of to discuss my Achilles recovery. So you will be getting some real life processing here. The first instinct answer that comes to mind is it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it would be, or that other people maybe would have thought it would be, because for me, I did a lot of that untangling with my identity back in 2017 when I stopped running at the professional level. At that time, I really had to face who I was. And I think actually, coincidentally, that was the exact time I started the podcast. And at first I didn't think anyone would. I was like, why would anyone want to listen to me? I'm a has-been, and I'm I'm not a runner anymore. I wasn't in that moment. Why would anyone care what I think? And then they did. And so that was a real reminder of like, they're not actually just here for your performance or your times. And that was other people, but obviously I had to do the work within my own self. And during that period, I did learn to, detach performance from my identity. And with the Achilles, it was interesting because I very much had a different approach to the way I viewed my body, even compared to having my two children. During this period, I really was able to look at my body with a sense of love, respect, and admiration, particularly in those first 2 weeks of watching it heal and being absolutely astounded of like the damage, well, not the damage, the repair that was done, the literal physically, I'm a squeamish person, so I'm trying to keep my words broad because I wouldn't want to hear anything detailed, but the literal cutting of a piece of your body that's not supposed to be cut and how it comes back together within a few weeks. I mean, I was just utterly astounded. But that said, I also was very intentional with sleep. I was getting 10 hours of sleep a night. I was eating not as I had in my elite days of like eating to be as fit as I could or as skinny as I could to run what I thought was as fast as I could. But this was a like, what do you need right now? And then I'd give it to it. And then there'd also be like, well, mentally, I kind of feel like I would enjoy, a cookie. Okay, well then have the cookie. But it wasn't. It was like from a place of love. And so with that identity piece and coming back, I was able to take the steps of it with a bit more grace than I've ever been able to give my body before. Of like, you are where you are. Let's take it day by day. And don't get me wrong, there were periods, and I know I spoke to you at one of these where I just was like, this is really hard. There were a few periods in particular where it just felt the shoulds kind of got in the way, which should have been by this by now, or I really thought I was going to be doing this by now. And then sure enough, like at random times, it felt like it would just turn that corner or hit that next level, and then it would kind of be an up and up again. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. And it sounds like your previous lived experiences, even though it wasn't necessarily injury related, you were able to like pull on that. And it sounds like you knew the mental toll it was going to take on you, like going through this process. And I think it might be helpful for those who are struggling like with this type of pain, just to get a little backstory before the surgery. How long did you actually struggle with like insertional Achilles pain before surgery? And like, what are some of the things that you did try prior to surgery?
Yeah, mine was pretty short amount of time compared to a lot of people who do end up having the surgery. So I was dealing with it for probably a year and a half, 2 years. I know many people who deal with it for 4, 5, 6 years before they reach that point. But for me, I've never been someone who has just run through pain. I mean, yes, of course, there's some level of discomfort we all run through in races, but I was always raised from being a child, like a teenager running. Um, if I had a pain, or what we would say in England, a niggle, I would stop and take a few days off. Usually it was 3, and then let it calm down, and then see how it was. And often that would be enough. But even so, I never had in my elite running career more than a stress reaction. That was I had a stress reaction and a calf strain. Those were the 2 worst injuries I had, because I was very insistent that I would stop and take care and address something before running through it. So even me running through a year and a half to 2 year of something was a lot. That said, anyone who's dealing with Achilles issues or any tendon issues know that it is it's not kind of a stress fracture-esque pain where it's like, and stop. It always like tempts you because it warms up, and then it's okay one day and then it's not the next, and you never really know. But for me, I wanted to address it. I had a very good friend, Stephanie Howe, who is a professional trail runner. She had had the exact same surgery as me, but she had had it 5 times because she tried various ways of going about it, like doing the minimal version, doing this surgeon, going to that surgery, getting this done on both feet. And ultimately she was like, just please trust me. Go to this person, do it this way, get it taken care of. And so I did trust her. I had her exact surgeon. Um, and um, and then but to answer your question before, what did I do? I do have a podcast episode where I specifically go through what the stages I did with my chiropractor, who was essentially kind of my sports med person that worked with me the whole way. We did a lot of various calf work, including, Mobo board, toe pro. We did shockwave. We did needling. We did what else did we do? Like endless amounts of strengthening exercises, kind of getting the glutes firing, getting it working. I'm trying to remember what else. I feel like there's another form of therapy that I'm missing: shockwave, needling.
Yeah, you didn't get any like the PRP
No,
injections or okay.
no, I'm not. I'm not really like PRP, cortisone. I've never had either of
Mm-hmm.
those before. And so, yeah, for me, it was, and the most important thing was we did various levels of pulling back, resting, trying to take time off, taking time back, cutting back on things, cutting the hills. We tried all kinds of experimental stuff with my training, but nothing really calmed it down enough. And I just kind of decided that for me, I would rather not be running in pain. I would rather address it and not be running in pain every day and get it taken care of than just that's how I ended up quitting in the first place, was just hating it every day back in 2017, including a peroneal issue that was just constantly there. And so I just didn't want to go through that. I didn't want the joy to be sucked out of my running. So I would rather hit it right away and yeah, then be able to get on with my life.
Right. And yeah, the peroneal issue is another one of those common, and it was funny when you said before niggles. I never literally heard that word before in all of my like PT journey, rehab, like working in clinics for years. I've never heard the word before, and then started, the running podcast, and then heard from others in England and Australia calling niggles. And now I hear like all of my US based people saying the word now. So
Yeah,
I
what is
think
the equivalent? Is
you
there one?
guys like an ache or a pain, I
Is
guess,
that the
is
same?
like an ache.
But isn't
I think an ache would be, that's what I would
closest?
have called it. And now I've even started saying it. So, you've brought this over to like the US where it's like commonplace. I don't think it's only people from England say niggles anymore. I feel
Well,
like
good.
it's like a thing.
Yeah, so it's just like it's a word to represent like a really minor injury, like something that is not right, but usually can be calmed down, like I said, within a few days of rest, or something that, yeah, doesn't, I guess maybe the American word would, acute, would that maybe be the word? Like, or is that more of a
I feel
trauma
like
injury?
an acute, yes, and usually acute pain is usually associated with swelling, and sometimes the pain could
Mm,
be higher level. Like I think of
right.
a niggle as, like you said, like something mild. It goes away within a couple of days. Maybe it's just like a little irritating
Yeah, there you go.
pain, air
Yeah.
quotes there, right? That I think that's how we refer to it. But the peroneal issue is one that we do see commonly with someone who has insertional Achilles tendinopathy and like a Haglund's deformity, just because of the nature of your foot type is usually one that is a higher arch foot type,
Mm,
has this like high cavus rigid arch, and we do see usually commonly peroneal problems that are associated with it. So I'm not surprised that you did
mm.
have that previously as well. And it sounds like you did get to the point where you were frustrated. Was there a specific like turning point where you just were like, all right, this is it? Like, was there a specific race or like a certain mileage like you
Mm.
couldn't get over and you were just like, this is the turning point. I need to like actually do this
Yeah.
surgery because this is right for me.
Okay, well, anyone who knows me, and you probably could guess this as well, that I'm a very like emotional person. And so my chiropractor who I mentioned, Brennan Donahue, he was at the time working out at the gym with me. So we would work out together at our strength training session together with our coach. And I would go in there to the two of them and I'd be like, I've had enough. I'm getting surgery. That's it. I'm done with dealing with this. And they'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, where did this come from? Can we try something else first? And they'd be like, no, I've had enough. And then, a few days later, I'd be like, okay, so yeah, no, I don't feel like I'm ready for that just yet. I think that was a bit of a like jump to the gun. And they're like, you think? And then like 2 months later, I'd do the same thing again. That's it. I've had enough. I'm done with this injury. And so there were many waves kind of warning them that I was getting close to my breaking point with it. And I'm not sure they believed me when I actually said like, no, this time I really am. I think they were like, yeah, she'll calm back down. And I was like, no, I've booked an appointment. And they're like, okay, all right, we're doing this. But that said, there's two moments that come to mind. One is I did my first ultra marathon in May 2023, and it was a 50 mile, and it went really well. I finished third overall. I think it was like fourth fastest female time ever on that course. I was like, so then that evening I was with my best friend and pacer, who I don't know, he was with me at the run show. I can't remember if you met him or not, but
I didn't, but yeah, I remember you going up to meet him. Yeah.
We were in the hotel room and he said, oh, how are you feeling this evening? And I said, yeah, my legs feel okay. My heel's throbbing though, really throbbing. And then the next morning, how are you feeling? And I said, I don't feel very sore, but my heel is like 10 out of 10. And in that moment, it was kind of like the rest of my body like was okay, but my heel, I was like, something is not right here. So that was kind of the moment I think I pushed it over the edge of where it went from being kind of a somewhat of a pain to a like, yeah, I'm done with this. I'm not playing games anymore, Tina. You need to do something about this. And then the other moment is actually, I did a few months later. I was a pacer / support person for my friend Brian Reynolds, who is a double amputee. He was doing Leadville, and Leadville 100 mile. I'm assuming most listeners have at least heard of it. It's high in the mountains, high climbing. You go up and over a mountain, down the other side, and back again. Brian did not make it back again, but we did that together. I took him over the mountain. We stopped at the 50 mile. The time was cut off. But the next morning, I went for a run, and again, it was 10 out of 10 pain. And in that moment, I remember thinking to myself, yeah, I don't know if I can deal with this every day, or every time I try and do something. And so those two moments stick in my mind of that debilitating of like, yeah, this is not okay. And how long can I handle this before I need to get it taken care of?
Right. Yeah. And it sounded like that wasn't the quality of life that you wanted to live. And yeah, 10 out of 10 pain is pretty darn debilitating.
Yeah.
And did you have kind of the most common, I know there's a couple of different procedures where they do like an osteotomy where they try to shorten the calcaneus in the bone, but I guess the most common is where they cut like that Haglund's deformity off and then they kind of reattach the Achilles and kind of suture it down. Is that the surgery that you did wind up having where they did some bone shaving?
I'd love to address the quality of life piece you said, because that is such a critical part here that I haven't mentioned yet of, the getting up off the couch and like hobbling and being in my 30s and hobbling and thinking like, do I want to be doing this? And when my daughter would come running towards me, my 4-year-old, or was she 3 to 4-year-old at the time, I would instinctively pull my left foot behind my right for fear that she would, hit it with some part of her body and I would jump to the ceiling. And yeah, that's not really, there's the running, that's one piece, but just the like inability to get up and run across the room if you need to, or playing with my kids and being concerned about where my foot is so that it doesn't get jumped on by a child. And don't get me wrong, like there's still some like trauma attached to that mentally of I'm still moving my left foot out the way because I still am scared of it, but I hope over time I'll let go of that. But yes, the quality of life is also a huge piece. So I just wanted to speak to
Mm-hmm.
that first. Which surgery I had, mine was a little bit different because the majority of the problem was actually the Achilles rather than the bone. He did remove the bone, or not remove the bone. Hopefully he didn't remove my bone.
Well, a portion of it, probably.
Yeah, so he
The
shaved
bulk.
down the bone.
Yeah.
But the damage, he did say he removed 40% of my Achilles at the attachment point because it had
Wow.
built up so much. And it was huge. So it was just extra Achilles that my foot had built. And he needed to remove most of that. I'm trying to remember the word he used. I think he said awful. He said the bone isn't too bad, but the Achilles is awful. So yeah, you're like, that's not a word you really want to associate with a part of your body, but
Right.
hopefully it's not that now.
Yes. Yeah. So they kind of debrided all that, like, quote unquote bad scar tissue that, occurred over that year and a half time from just like collagen getting laid down that's not, in the right pathway, so to speak. And so they kind of debrided that, but then they also shaved a little of the bone. So guys, for those who are like maybe considering the surgery, it is pretty intense surgery. Like, this is one of those things that, number one, your Achilles tendon, you kind of need it to walk, do everything. And it's a very powerful and strong tendon. However, when you have a surgery like this, where they're debriding it and then suturing it back onto the bone, it does take a while to heal before you can place any stresses through it, because you want it to really heal the right way before you start stressing it. So it basically doesn't fail, right? So what did some of your, if you can remember, just like injury recovery time frames, like how long couldn't you put weight on your foot? Or do you remember like how long you were in a walking boot for?
Well, some of these questions are how long physically and how long mentally, because some things my PT would tell me to do, and I was like, absolutely not. And they'd be like, no, you can do this. And I'm like, no way, that is way too scary. And of course I would do it, but there's a mental piece there for sure. But yes, I was kind of pushed along a little bit quicker because I did go to Stedman Clinic in Vale, where they work with there was like Tom Brady's jersey on the wall and Lewis Hamilton and Colin Kaepernick. And so you're like seeing all these jerseys on the wall and thinking like, whoa, this is do I belong to be here? But that said, so they took me out of the cast the next day. So I was actually only in a cast for one day, which is unusual.
Right.
And put it in a boot straight away. Which was good because then I could take my foot out of the boot and let it breathe a bit and let the scar heal quickly. But yeah, I was in the boot for 6 weeks total. I was non-weight bearing for 2 weeks, and then took another 2 weeks to build the amount of weight I could put on the crutches. It was like 3 days at 10% and then 3 days at 20%. Like, of course you're like guessing, you're asking your PT, you're like, what does 35% of my weight feel like? So who knows what I was actually doing, but I was trying to gradually add more and more. And then, at 6 weeks, the boot came off, and then it's just gradually getting your foot used to walking. I will say for me, it felt like the first 2 weeks, makes sense. And then even building back to getting off the boot and off the crutches, made sense and seemed to go quickly. But the stage from getting walking, on my 2 feet to feeling like I could walk without pain was a lot longer than I thought. There's again a mental piece, but also it kind of hurts for a while just to walk around, and so it's really tempting to kind of do this hitch with your hip to like avoid pushing off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do remember feeling like I was close to being ready to run at like 5 months, but PT's kind of overruling it and saying, you need to be able to do Jay DeSherry, renowned physical therapist out of Bend. Thankfully, he's a good friend, and he jumped on a Zoom call with, my people here in St. Louis and the person from Vale. And he said, you need to be able to do 25 eccentric, slow calf lowers
Mm-hmm.
before you're ready to run. And I wasn't even close to doing that. But so that was pretty devastating. But that was a marker that he said when you'll be ready to run when you can do 25 of these slowly. Yeah. And then everything else it's hard to remember exact numbers of things, but those are the key ones.
Right. And I like that you actually mentioned the 25 single leg calf raises, because even runners in general, any
Yeah.
runner should be able to do that in order to tolerate the demands of running. And it is one of those tests that we screen when we're, just looking at someone's like readiness to run, or like all the runners that I see now. That is one of the tests that we include. And it is amazing how many, and even well accomplished runners, cannot do 25 single leg heel raises. So, for what it's worth, for those that have heard me mention that before, the fact that your PT consultant really used that as a benchmark to be like, I'm not even going to allow you to run until you can do this, I think speaks to the point that the calf muscles, the Achilles tendon, it actually contracts the most percentage of any other muscles in our legs when we're running at our easy conversational pace.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of force that is generated by those muscles. So it is important to have that like underlying foundational strength. So I love that. That was one of the benchmarks for you. So it sounds like was it around that 6-month mark when you did start running?
Yeah, it was around 6 months. And even during that period, I had some. I mean, during the 6 months to 10, 11 months, there was some like weird physical things going on, because the part I had to remind myself, and we should remind your listeners, is you're during that boot time and the crutch time, my whole left leg was off. And during that 6 months of not running, both my legs were not running. And so I would get these weird things. Like, again, my peroneal was like very angry. Once we started running for a few weeks, it was, to the point of where I was like, should I stop? And they were like, no, it's just got to get used to going again. You haven't been using it.
It's just
And
a niggle.
It's just a niggle, yeah. And then I started getting a weird like quad failure thing, which I'm still working through to some extent, of where my right quad was just like not strong enough to handle running. And I think it was because I was leaning too far to the right, like to avoid pushing off on the left. But so even during that period, once I got going, there's still, your whole body has got to get back adjusted to running, which is, again, with expectations in your brain, you're like, well, no, I expect my Achilles to be angry. You're allowed to be angry. But like peroneal, calf, quad, excuse me, what are you complaining about? But the reality is, like, the whole body has dealt with this injury. And so trying to be gentle with yourself as your body kind of reworks itself. I was saying last week, I felt like that long run I had that was really good, I felt like the pieces of my body like finally like stuck back together again, because before it kind of been like they'd been running a little bit separate to each other. So it takes a while.
I think you bring up a great point that it does affect the whole body because of how long you were out of commission. Like insertional Achilles rehab can be painfully slow, like both physically, mentally. What specific like benchmarks or like small wins like helped you to stay motivated when progress felt like invisible at times?
Yeah, well, the PT particularly was very difficult to keep on, especially during periods where it felt like you weren't getting anywhere, and it was very tempting to just like lie on the couch and not do your PT for the day. I had many moments of that. Little wins that I had. Trying to think of some in specific. I mean, the first time I got to run in the trails was a really special moment, because that's what I had been like fantasizing about, and particularly the first run that was close to 2 hours. That's what I'd been thinking about, like how good it was going to feel to be running in the trails again. So that was a huge moment. While I was pulled back shortly after it, getting to run 3 by 2 minutes at Leadville with my best friend as he ran through the aid station. I was told after that was when I was told, no, actually, you're not ready. But
Right.
that moment was very special because I was like, I'm on my way. And even though it was taken away afterwards, it did revive me of like, this is why I'm doing this, because I got to see someone I love, running well and finishing third and being like, that's one of the things I'm going to be able to do once I'm back. Any other moments in particular? And the first time I started biking, I think that was another huge one of getting to bike after, not doing any exercise, but also that, fear of that movement of just the rotation on the bike. But how good that felt to just move my body. I've never been someone who enjoyed biking, but that I've been so grateful for cycling in this rehab period.
Yeah, that's something that I've never been into biking whatsoever. I went through like a plantar fascia tear last summer, and I was, not able to run for a good like 6 weeks. And the biking, same thing. I was just grateful to be able to do that, even though I, you know, hated biking. Like I would
Yeah.
never, that'd be like the thing I would stay away from,
Yeah.
from doing. But it is weird when, things are taken away from you, how
Yeah.
grateful you become of
Yeah.
just moving your body and
Yeah.
just being able to exercise. And I bet you that first run you had in the trails, you probably had to stop so many times to like hug so many trees that
Yeah,
you're,
I'm trying to remember if I did stop for I probably did. On that day in particular, I think there was a big part. Oh no, I did. I stopped at the halfway point. I went up the big hill, down the other side, and then I stopped and hugged some trees. So yeah, that was during my January when I was having people hug trees, or I hugged a tree every day. Yeah, and I did really, really appreciate that. And and that's another piece to speak to right now, actually, is it's one thing getting your running legs back under you, but in that moment and many other moments, it has been incredibly humbling to see how my fitness was lost. It makes sense, right? You take 6 months off, take another 6 months of slowly building back. But the struggle that I would feel, going up hills that I used to breeze my way up, or just trying to get through a run was really, really difficult. Even once the physical part was there, the fitness, it really took a hit. And I don't think even the biking kind of hides it a little bit, because you're like, oh, I biked 40 miles today, I'm so fit. But then there's a definite period where your body's trying to translate it to running, and it's mentally difficult to accept where you are. But then, as I said, last weekend for me, it kind of clicked back together, and that was all of a sudden too.
yeah. And I know you had a whole holistic approach, a team effort in this whole recovery, but, were there any specific exercises, treatments, or like mindset shifts that made the biggest impact in your comeback that might be helpful for someone else?
The number one thing that comes to mind is the Mobo board. I cannot say enough positive about the Mobo board, and that's designed by that PT I mentioned earlier, Jay DeSherry. I could not believe how much stronger my foot felt after that, how much more control I had when it came to doing a lot of the rehab exercises. The balance I would have before and after building up the Mobo strength was night and day. Like trying to do a squat when you're trying to like grip like in a kind of arch shape of like, it just doesn't make any sense, versus your foot all the way flat on the ground, gripping the ground very intentionally and trying to do a squat that way. Like it was so different. So the Mobo board is 100% the thing that comes to mind. I wish I had been doing that pre-surgery, because that, like, I mean, years ago, who knows how my journey could have been different. I don't believe in changing anything, but that's something I would absolutely say. um and then I think mentally what comes to mind is just that trying to find joy in the journey. I mean, we hear it all the time, right? But like, I'm thinking to one of my running friend here in St. Louis who I run with. He took me to Walmart and we drove around in one of the little carts. Oh, I did. He walked next to me. And so, like, that was someone who I usually run with who came with me and made the most of the fact that I was on crutches by driving around in this little cart that I would otherwise never have the opportunity to do. or getting to you support friends at races rather than being the one running the race. I could be on the side and cheering and really watching what it meant to people. So finding ways to, enjoy the journey in running, but also see what the down periods allowed me to appreciate that I wouldn't have otherwise got to do. Same with biking. I really actually, the one good thing about biking is in the summer on a 90-degree day, it's actually quite enjoyable. 90-degree day for a
Yeah.
runner, not
Right.
fun. So there was like that piece too of like, actually, this is quite nice. Like, sure, when you come to a stoplight, it's like, vroom, the heat hits you. But like while you're biking, the wind is blowing, so, they're trying to find ways to enjoy the bits along the way that aren't what you asked for.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And many runners try to push through Achilles pain for months, if not years. What do you wish someone had told you earlier, besides the mobile board, of course, that might have changed your timeline or outcome possibly?
I mean, I would reiterate about strength training, making sure that you're, building a full holistic body that is strong in every sense rather than just skipping that to do runs. I would be very intentional with shoes, of what shoes that you are wearing, and particularly what shoes make it feel worse. I did run quite a lot in zero drop for many years, and I don't know if that affected me, but maybe I would have done more kind of 50-50 with zero drop shoes, just so that I wasn't putting so much strain on my Achilles. And I do believe that we will only hear a message when we're ready to hear it. So me telling someone, and I have had many people say to me about surgery, should I get it? If my message is speaking to you, or if this podcast is speaking to you, if someone is telling you to get surgery, if you're ready to listen to it and you are at a point where it's time, you will listen. But there's nothing I can do that can convince you if you're not ready to hear the message. And I believe that with everything. It was the same with my amenorrhea, not having your period, eating challenges. Like you have to want to do it for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. That's how you're going to get the best outcomes, right? And be able to move on in this portion and chapter of your life. And how did you know your post-surgery progress wasn't just healing, but actually, and you can hear this in how you speak about this experience, that you've really rebuilt a stronger, more resilient version of yourself as a runner. Like, when did you realize that, or that, that was going to be an outcome of going through this process?
There's continuing moments, including actually even today. I went for a run and I just did a recovery run, a regular run, but I chose to do it over many of the hills in our area. And running up and down those hills today, because now I'm trying to, build for a very hilly race later this year, I realized how few times I'd actually done those hills in my training, because I'd always just avoided them. There'd been many years where I had just I didn't want to feel tired. I didn't want to feel slow. And so I just picked the easiest course. I cut corners on so many things because I thought, well, what does it matter anyway? And so getting to rebuild is actually really a gift in many ways, because you can start from scratch. That said, when I said about my peroneal bothering me, that was incredibly frustrating, because I was like, I'm doing everything to build this, and why are you still bothering me? But that was just a period it had to go through. But yeah, it really was a joy to put strength training first for quite a while. For many months, my strength training and my PT, but particularly the strength training, was the focus. And I really enjoyed that piece of getting to build a more well-rounded version of myself, rather than always going to strength training exhausted and being like, do what you can with the leftovers of my energy. Um, and so now I actually do prioritize it. And one thing I have learned is I always avoided doing, hard runs on my strength training days. Now I actually tend to do that. So then I have, as it was yesterday, a full rest day with nothing. And I've really kind of learned a lot about myself in terms of how to get the most out of myself. I'm still learning. So we will see over the coming months how I continue to add this back in as I add more running. Do I start skipping on things? I don't know. I will admit some of the PT things have slipped. And I think I can get away with it for now, but
Mm-hmm.
is that going to come bite me long term? I don't know.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a balance, right?
Mm.
And you should be able to, gradually decrease the amount of time that you're spending on some of those, we'll
Mhm.
call it ancillary, either stabilization exercises or strengthening exercises, isolation exercises, things of that nature. But you may need to continue some element, right, of that kind of moving forward. So I think all that is normal.
Mm.
And it does sound, I love that you are really valuing, number one, what I heard there is like the value of strength training, and that it's not just going to be this extra little thing you do on top of the running, but you are going to give your energy in terms of like physical energy, mental energy to actually having intention with your
Mhm.
strength training,
Mhm.
and then recovery, because recovery is a part of the training. And the fact that you are, having one full rest recovery day that allows your body to recover from the training is important. And like
Mm.
every runner does need that. So I think those are important take home points. Just, that anyone can apply, even if they didn't go through the surgery at all. So I love that. And is there anything else that you feel like your relationship with training or racing or recovery kind of changed from pre-surgery to what you have now that you are, running these hills, you're running pain free and running long again?
Um, Well, a few things come to mind. One, just back to the strength training you were saying there, I think a big piece of what I've learned is trust, particularly in my coach, Ryan. I think before, it's quite easy to go into strength training, particularly with people who aren't runners themselves. Ryan has done 2 marathons, I think, but definitely not a runner. Couldn't consider himself a runner. Um, and I think in my head, there was always a piece of like, restriction of not me thinking you're a meathead, but like, why am I doing this like arm thing? I don't want to be doing an arm thing. You're supposed to be building my legs. But now I trust him that all of these pieces that he's putting in are there to build a stronger me from head to toe. And yes, that does include having, arms that are not bulked up. I haven't bulked up, but I am strong and stronger than I've ever been in my arms. So that's one piece I think is finding a strength coach that you trust is everything. And it wasn't to say that like there was any reason I didn't fully trust him. It was just a lesson I learned along the way of not judging people because they're not runners. Although obviously if you get someone who's a runner, that's definitely a benefit because they understand. Um, and the second thing that comes to mind is I honestly think in future times when I'm traveling, if my options are a Peloton workout or a run in downtown LA or around a grocery store parking lot, I would pick the Peloton workout. So I think it's allowed me to loosen my grip on running is superior and allow for a little bit of curiosity into other forms of strength training. In fact, this summer, I'm saying this out loud so I do it. I
Love
really
it.
want to exchange one of my runs for a roller blading, skating down the trail. Not trail on the rail trail.
Right,
So
right.
like that's a good example. I would never do that. But I like not having running have to be everything. So yeah, I think that's what comes to mind.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because I actually onboarded an athlete yesterday, and he said, actually something very similar about inline skating. He's like, yeah, we're looking, my buddies and I were looking to make rollerblading cool again. And so I think it's going to be making a comeback.
Yeah.
We're going like back to the 90s here.
I love it. I saw so many people when I was biking, my many, many hours out biking. I would see those people and they just looked like they were just in this zone of where they were just loving life. And and the women were always wearing like a crop top and leggings, and the men just kind of looked like they were like flowing along. And I was like, that looks so fun. So yeah, I'm in with your client there, because let's do it.
Yeah. So where are you now? What is running looking like? I know you alluded to, doing some challenging long runs on hills. What types of races have you done?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm doing a bit of a weird mix of things the rest of the year. I'm doing 2 half marathons in this month. One in Brooklyn is going to be running with the woman who made my trash skirt. It's her first half marathon, so I get to run it with her, which
awesome.
I'm very excited about, Natalia. And then I'm going to do the Bank of America Chicago 13.1 at the end of the month. And so that will be just kind of 2 fun things I get to do. And then in June, that's where it really starts getting interesting. I am about to sign up for a Broken Arrow, which is a basically climbing a mountain race. I don't know how that's going to go, hence why I've been trying to add more hills into my life. It is literally climbing a mountain. There's varying distances. I'm going to do the 23K. So we'll see how that goes. I've never done anything like this, but I thought, why not? As I said, now I can stop avoiding hills. Maybe it won't be as difficult as it would have, it won't be as impossible as it would have been had I gone to it with the training I'd been doing before. And then the goal is to hopefully be able to pace my friend I mentioned earlier in the final 20 miles of Western States. That is my kind of focus point right now. I would love to be able to bring him home. He got a golden ticket a few weeks ago, last runner into the race with the golden ticket.
Wow.
So that's a focus, but I will not do it unless I'm absolutely confident I can run whatever pace he needs. And then, the big focus for the year is hopefully, if I can pull the trigger on signing up, the Cape Town 100K in end of November. So that will be the race that I'm training for, if I can get myself on the registration page to do it.
You will. I think you're going to find the courage. Maybe after you listen to this back,
I know,
possibly.
Yeah. Well, I hope by this time this comes out, I've already done it. That's what I'm hoping. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're certainly training hard. And I think, if you're listening to this right now and you're feeling discouraged by your own Achilles pain, I hope this conversation with Tina really showed you that recovery is not only possible, it's powerful. And whether you're exploring conservative care or facing the reality of surgery, know this, that healing is not linear all the time, but with the right mindset, guidance, and persistence, you can get back to running the life really that you want, and get back to the thing that you love doing. So huge thanks to you, Tina, for coming on to share your honest journey. And for those listening to this right now who might be going through a similar struggle, remember, you're not alone on this path. And if you do want to take the next step toward pain-free running, and you are struggling with Achilles pain, you can get our download of the Ultimate Guide to Running Healthy Without Achilles Pain, which is packed, with strategies I use with the runners that I coach as a running physical therapist. And it's 100% free. So just head to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/Achilles, or click the link that I have for you in the show notes. Tina, this has been such a powerful conversation. Where is the best place for our healthy runner community to connect with you, to learn all about the great sustainability initiatives that you have on the horizon?
Yeah, before I get to that, I do want to just say, for anyone who has been dealing with this, definitely take advantage of what you're offering there to go get that. it is worth trying to get it taken care of first before you do take the drastic step of surgery. However, I also want to say that, like, you know, when if you are preparing for thinking about surgery, or if you are even dealing with this, the idea of saying, like, for me, it was like, this is going to be a year. It was like, a year? A year? But that year went by so quickly. You find other things that are meaningful in life. You learn about yourself during that year. So don't let the fear of what feels like a really long time stop you from taking care of yourself, because it, as you mentioned, Dwayne, it is possible to run without pain. Like, is my foot perfect? No. But it is so much better than it was before. So it is possible to run without pain most of the time, if not almost all of the time. And so, yeah, while it's really disheartening along the way, like, it is possible. And you know yourself, you know, if you trust yourself, what the answer is for you right now. So there's that.
Great insight.
Thank you. In answer to your question, well, you can, the biggest thing I would probably send people to, well, two things right now is on my Instagram, Tina Muir 88, TINAMUIR 88 is my Instagram. And I put lots of, you know, little things you can do. Just nothing is from a place of, you should be doing this, or how dare you not do that, but a place of welcoming you in and do what you can. Very much imperfect action. But I'd also encourage people to go to tinamuir.com just to find to go sign up for my email newsletter. From there, I send out just a weekly email, very light, kind of usually a story, and just I'd love to stay in touch with you via that. It's really enjoyed by a lot of the running community, and I'd love to have you on there. So those are the two biggest things. Or if you want to get a copy of my book, Becoming a Sustainable Runner.com, you'll be able to go get a copy of that. So we'll see hopefully some of the community over there.
Yeah, we got the book right here, Becoming a Sustainable Runner. And I always look forward to actually opening your emails. Like, I don't know how many people say they look forward to opening like their inbox, because it is definitely stressful, right? Like, especially if your inbox is like flooded or you're behind, like I oftentimes are. But I always make time to read your emails, because I love, yes, just hearing from you.
Yeah.
And like you said, they are storytelling, and we can gain some insight. So this is why this is actually a joy for me hearing, honestly, on the other side, because I remember you talking about your insertional Achilles pain, like, 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, when you first started having it. And I was kind of following that journey along the way. So it's nice to now get like the end of the story.
Yeah.
And like close the loop there. So thank you for sharing all that info. And I'll certainly put all those links in the show notes. And it's always such a treat to connect with you. I appreciate you, Tina.
Yeah, right back at you. Thank you for all you do. I say this on behalf of your community. Like, you're such a gift. So keep up the good work, because we appreciate it.
Thank you. And if you want to hear more from Tina about like running for life, community, and the planet, then check out my previous conversation in episode 197 on the Healthy Runner podcast. And if you found this conversation about insertional Achilles tendinopathy insightful and want to learn how to treat this condition without surgery so you can get back to pain-free running, then queue up episode 255 on the Healthy Runner podcast, or just click the video that I have for you next. And now let's continue to grow a strong mind, a strong body, and just keep running, friends. Until next time.